Trump released his AI action plan, which was basically about we need to make sure America stands up to China in terms of its artificial intelligence. It was a very clear declaration of, I won't say war, but a Cold War between America and China. And interestingly, OpenAI and Sam Altman are aligning themselves with that and saying we need to make sure the US is at the forefront of this movement. And one of the big issues was that China had been given open reign over open source artificial intelligence because Mark Zuckerberg, the only person or the only group that were making high-end open source models was Meta and their Llama model. They had basically declared they're pulling back from that and they are leaving open source to the Chinese. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle, and we're going to be running through the latest AI news of the day. And it is starting again. So I just read Ben's Bytes newsletter yesterday. So Ben Tossell is an AI commentator and he has a really good newsletter, which you should subscribe to, called Ben's Bytes. And it just made me laugh reading his first paragraph here is reporting live from sunny Mallorca again. Kids are running me ragged in the pool and AI is doing the same via X as usual. I'm trying to have a little break from fundraising, building, investing in kids, but it's not quite how this trip is shaking out. So over the last week or so, the news has been quiet. There hasn't been that much going on in the world of AI. And it has felt like everyone has taken a deep breath before this week. And it is starting to kick in. As Ben has said here, and this seems to be happening, multiple launches are possible this week. The rumor lands buzzing that OpenAI's open weight model is going to come in two sizes, 20B and 120B. We're going to talk about that in a moment because they have just dropped their open source models. Very exciting. Plus, expect news about Opus 4.1. That just dropped yesterday as well from Anthropic. GPT-5 and new Gemini stuff this week. I think GPT-5 is coming this Thursday. So I think tomorrow we are going to have GPT-5. I might be wrong, and we will know very shortly. On Friday, I'll be doing this show and saying, no, I'm an idiot. It's not here yet. I think we're about to get GPT-5. So Sam Altman has been busy this week. He's very good at Twitter. He's good at dropping enough information to get people excited without giving it away too much. So yesterday he said, we have a lot of new stuff coming for you over the next few days. Something big but small today. So that's the new open source model, which I'm going to talk about in a second, because I think this is probably the biggest news so far this week. And then a big upgrade later this week. Generally, not always, but generally OpenAI release their models. They release huge features on Thursdays. That's when they like to do their big launches, on the Thursday, so they can own the news cycle going into the weekend. So generally, we've always seen GPT-4, 4.0, etc. dropping on a Thursday. I think we're about to see GPT-5 tomorrow. So tomorrow is Thursday. We'll see it US time, obviously, and I'll be able to talk to you about it on Friday. So I've already cleared out my evening tomorrow so that I can play with it. Fingers crossed we get it, but again, we'll see. We have no idea. What we do have, though, which is maybe even more exciting, it depends what GPT-5 is, but we have a new open source model from OpenAI. So OpenAI have often been criticized, mainly by Elon Musk, for not actually being open. Most of their models, nearly all of their models, are closed source. So this is something I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, especially vis-a-vis China, because China are primarily putting out open source models. And I've done a whole video about why that is and why it's part of soft power and building a platform for the future of artificial intelligence instead of worrying about profits right now. Whereas OpenAI, despite their namesake, have had closed models. So you have to pay to use their models. Basically, it means that instead of being able to deploy it on your own system and build off the top of it, you need to pay to access via their API. They have just released some open source models. And what they've done previously is release open source models, but they've been so far behind their frontier models that it's mainly been a curiosity or an interest for people who want to build AI applications that don't need the frontier, the best models at the moment. What they've just done is release something that is pretty much up to the standard of what we have with O3 and 4.0. So they have, this is also why I think GPT-5 is just around the corner. They've basically demolished their model underneath, but built on O3 and 4.0, because now somebody can locally deploy one of these open source models and not have to pay the API costs if they are building applications. So this is big news. And it's also at the same time as Zuckerberg has indicated that Meta will be pulling back from open source artificial intelligence. Everything's moving. This is why it's important to have these kind of daily updates and to keep abreast of what's going on. I do this for a job, and it is still mind-boggling the amount of movements that are going on. So for abnormal people out there who are not reading this stuff every single day or doing live shows, it's too much information. So hopefully these videos will be useful, helping you work out what on earth is important and what you can ignore. If you do these lives, you find this useful, everything is available on YouTube. We clip everything up and we put it into a newsletter as well to make it easier for you to get access to what you need to see. So the OpenAI, excuse me, I should be able to say that by now. The OpenAI new models are called OSS. I'm going to read directly from Sam Altman's tweet, actually. So GPT-OSS is a big deal. It's a state-of-the-art open weights, i.e. you can see the whole model and all the weights inside it, reasoning model, so O3, with strong real-world performance comparable to O4 Mini, so it's not quite the same as their frontier models, but it's not far behind, that you can run locally on your own computer or phone with the smaller size. So they've made an edge model, which works on other devices. We believe this is our best and most usable open model. So we believe this is the best and most usable open model in the world. It probably is. I'll need to check that out, but we'll have the results of that probably tomorrow. We're excited to make this model the result of billions of dollars of research available to the world to get AI into the hands of the most people possible. This is the dream of open source. We believe far more good than bad will come from it. Scary that you have to say that, but yes, okay. For example, GPT-OSS 120 billion or 120B performs about as well as O3 on challenging health issues. So O3 is their top reasoning model right now. They have just released a basically free open source version of this. You can run on your own devices. The 120B will not run on your phone, but you will be able to run it on a computer, which is amazing. But it is the same reasoning performance as their O3 model, which is until now, until maybe tomorrow when GPT-5 comes out, if it does, O3 is their top reasoning model. So we have worked hard to mitigate the most serious safety issues, especially around biosecurity, okay? GPT-OSS models perform comparably on our frontier models on internal safety benchmarks, okay? So this is always a fear with open source models, is that once you release this model into the world, it is literally opening Pandora's box. So Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, has actually recommended against this. It's not because he doesn't want people to have, no, it is. It's a weird one because generally open source is seen as altruistic. It's like giving out these models so people can build on it, but that can be used by nefarious actors. So some people, including Mark Zuckerberg now, is saying, actually, we need to keep these most powerful models secure inside. And Geoffrey Hinton, who has kind of warned about these models, despite being on the forefront of the research decades ago, they want it protected and closed. So there's always this weird balance between, it's ethical to give these models out to the world and to allow people to build and to not charge for them. That's the ethical thing to do. But at the same time, a great risk comes with that, which is people can potentially use it to make biological weapons and to create misinformation, and with image models to create deepfakes, etc. So it's a weird line to toe, and Sam Altman in this statement is trying to do that. So he's saying it's the best in the world, it's really powerful, but not so powerful that people can cause harm with it because we have put safety guidelines on it. We'll see. So we believe in individual empowerment, although we believe most people will want to use convenient services like ChatGPT. So that's the web interface one that you can connect to. People should be able to directly control and modify their own AI when they need to, and the privacy benefits are obvious. So this is the main reason why people do local large language models, is so the information is not going back and forward to a company like OpenAI. So he's acknowledging that. As part of this, we are quite hopeful that this release will enable new kinds of research and the creation of new kinds of products. We expect a meaningful uptick in the rate of innovation in our field, and for many more people to do important work than we're able to before. OpenAI's mission is to ensure AGI that benefits all of humanity. To that end, we're excited for the world to be building on an OpenAI stack created in the United States, based on democratic values, available for free to all and for wide benefit. Fascinating. So last week, Monday, Trump released his AI action plan, which was basically about, we need to make sure America stands up to China in terms of its artificial intelligence. It was a very clear declaration of, I won't say war, but a Cold War between America and China. And interestingly, OpenAI and Sam Altman are aligning themselves with that and saying we need to make sure the US is at the forefront of this movement. And one of the big issues, again, I talked about this in a previous video a couple of days ago, was that China had been given open reign over open source artificial intelligence because Mark Zuckerberg, the only person or the only group that were making high-end open source models was Meta and their Llama model. They had basically declared they're pulling back from that and they are leaving open source to the Chinese. A week later, OpenAI have entered the fight. So we now have GPT-OSS. I think this is a huge deal. It's probably not going to get as much media coverage as GPT-5 if we get that tomorrow, but I think this is probably more important in the longer term in terms of how humanity adopts artificial intelligence, but it's more subtle. That's why I've spent quite a long time reading this and going through it, because this is harder to understand, like why this is important compared to, hey, this new AI makes cool images. That's a lot more visual and a lot more people will grok that. They will literally understand that than something about open source versus closed source. Pardon the extemporizing and me talking a lot about this, but I think this is really important. Cool. So I'm going to hop over to some questions, see what we've got. And then I do have some more potential. Well, I've got some news on Grok. I've got Claude Anthropic 4.1 and some other news. So we'll work through that in a minute. Just scrolling through. Hiya, Jack. Hiya, Aurora. There's a lot of people I recognize. Jack saying it definitely doesn't work on a phone. Let's be honest. So the new model is, let me find it. 20B is meant to work on a phone. I don't know how well it works on a phone is the question, but I would imagine not very fast. The thing is, all our models, not our models, all our devices are getting more powerful. So eventually we'll be able to, we can run lower level models on our phones already. They're just not very good compared to the frontier models. That's always going to be the issue. But inference, so running a model as a user, uses a lot less computation than training a model. You need GPUs, you need a huge server farm, obviously. But for inference, you can get away generally with much lower powered machines. But yeah, the phone version is going to be not so good. I'm trying to see if anyone's actually got it working on a phone. It can run on your phone and laptop. So 20 billion model. Okay, they're saying they can eventually be run on a phone. Okay, so that is a slippery language, I would say, because that's true. The phones are becoming more powerful, and we're probably going to see more and more phones that have GPU-enabled chips. We're already seeing them from Huawei, so chips that are specifically built to help run these models. And maybe Apple will get on board with that if they can get their stuff together, but I'm not holding out any hope on that one. But we'll see. Just scrolling. Hello, everybody. James Sanderson, this guy's not technical. He did an arts degree. Yes, I did history. I did history at Oxford, and I got an MBA from New York University, and I've run businesses. So where I'm coming at this is from a business point of view. I've run and consulted and bought and sold businesses. So I'm primarily on the business side and use artificial intelligence to grow and start businesses. No, I'm not a technical person, nor do I pretend to be. What I'm doing and what I'm hoping I can do is filtering this information, this news, using what knowledge I do have of the technicals to people who are starting and growing businesses, especially to solopreneurs and entrepreneurs who want to start something up anew, because I think this is a really exciting time to be able to start a business. Who was it the other day? Somebody was talking about, Jensen Huang was saying that this is the best time to become a millionaire, basically, because you can use these technologies, leverage these technologies, which are being made available for very cheap or for free. So we have a new open source model, for example, which can help reduce costs. It's the best time to be building something and getting it out into the world. And I fully agree, because when I first started my first online businesses in particular, I had to do everything. I had to build the website, build the product, do the customer service, work out how e-commerce worked. This was years ago. Now everything is so simple. I use Lovable for most things. I can code, but there's no need to. I'm putting together a new hub for all of my content at the moment, and I'm using Lovable and Cursor to get that done. And it is just so easy compared to what came before. So if you are a solopreneur or if you're in a small team, this is the most exciting time to start a business. So that is the lens at which I come to this through, is helping people actually use artificial intelligence. Most people do not need to know how models work. They do not need to be making their own models. In fact, that is now no longer relevant for individuals. It's a fun hobby thing to do, but an individual or a small team is not going to be able to outspend Grok, OpenAI, Google, etc. in terms of training a model. So the technical stuff's really fascinating and it's interesting to know what's going on, but the useful stuff is a level of abstraction above, which is, okay, cool. The AI companies have made this stuff. How can I use it? How can I use this to improve my life, the life of my family, the life of my community? That's the important stuff, which not that many people talk about. So that is my focus here. But no, I'm not technical. I did do an arts degree. I did history at Oxford, which was wonderful. What's the name of the GPT you just mentioned? So it's called GPT-OSS, which presumably stands for open source. What does the S stand for? It's a really good question. It's called GPT-OSS. Let's see what it stands for. Don't think anyone knows. And somebody must know this. I don't know what the second S is. So it's definitely open source something. Somebody can tell me in chat, I'm sure. But GPT-OSS, so there are 2 new versions that have just been released. They're on Hugging Face if you want to get access to them, as well as the other websites where you can get models, but Hugging Face is probably the main one. So here we go, GPT-OSS 20B. It has been downloaded 38,000 times already on Hugging Face, and 120B has been downloaded 40,000 times on Hugging Face, and GPT-OSS 20B, so the smaller model, has been downloaded 90,000 times. So pretty great. I still don't know what it's called. Sorry. So I still don't know why it's called that or what the OSS stands for. But with OpenAI, who's to know? They have such terrible naming generally. But you can go and grab that model at Hugging Face, or you can get it installed on your VPS or whatever you're using. Jack. Okay, Jack has some information. So someone tried the 20B. The 20B is their small slimline model on their M1 Mac 16 gigabytes RAM, and it worked at 1 word per minute. So this is always a problem with running models locally. If you're trying to literally do it on your phone or on your laptop or your computer, it's slow. It's really slow. And most people are used to basically the real-time responses of using the API version or using the Chatbot version, which is ChatGPT. We've all become used to that. When you have to use it and it is 1 word a minute, that means you cannot deploy anything useful. It's just too slow. So what most people do is they rent a server, and that server will have a bunch of GPUs. They're pretty cost effective, but you then deploy the model on that server, and then it's like you're having your own version of the OpenAI servers, but it's just for you and your customers or whoever you want to deploy it for. So you still have the benefits of security because it's your server rather than OpenAI server, but you deploy the OpenAI, the new model, GPT-OSS, onto that server. So yes, while you can deploy it on your own computer in your own house, the performance is not going to be great. And if you put it on a phone, until we have a specific edge device chips, which Intel have indicated they might move into, because Intel have fallen so far out of the semiconductors race. Their CEO in a private call that was leaked, investor call, it was leaked. He said, yeah, we've basically become irrelevant. What we're looking into now is edge devices. So the ability to run artificial intelligence on phones. So maybe someone like Intel will move into that. NVIDIA have not moved in that direction. I don't think there's enough money compared to just building GPUs for data centers. I think there is so much money in that field, and it's allowed them to become the largest company on earth, that they're just going to keep doing that. But I'm sure somebody will step in. I know Huawei had an AI chip. So it's the Ascend series from Huawei. It went into mass production in May for domestic Chinese customers. I don't know how good it is. It's just for the Chinese market at the moment. I don't know enough about that. I'd have to look it up. But this will be a market that people move into, is producing chips for telephones, which won't be able to run the most powerful model, not yet, but they'll always be able to run older models. This might also be what Apple are trying to do. But yeah, we haven't seen many successes there. Hi, Lila. How are you doing? Daniel says, Solopreneur right here, working on an app designed for mortgage brokerage case management. Cool. So definitely have a look at the new GPT-OSS. Depends what you're building with though, because so if you are, I'm not sponsored by them, but I just really love the company, Lovable. If you're building with something like Lovable, a vibe coding tool, it all gets very meta because Lovable is an AI tool that uses AI to help you produce application software, web apps mainly. But you can also make AI apps, so applications that call on AI. So it's AI all the way down. It's like the turtles. If you're doing that in Lovable, basically you would just give the API key for OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever it is to Lovable, and it will be able to connect you up, and then you pay for usage via application. With this new open source model, like other open source models, you deploy it on your own server, you'd rent a server, deploy the model there, and then you'd create an API link to your Lovable application. So this new open source model might be a way to really drive down costs inside your mortgage brokerage app or any app, in fact. It depends if inference costs are a large part of your cost basis, because I know people who they sell their app for $30 a month, but each user uses about 50p, like $1 worth of inference per month. So the profit margin is so large that it doesn't really matter. Yes, sure, they can maybe drive that $1 down to 75 cents. But at that point, it's, do we really bother? There's so much cash in this business. It's not really worthwhile. So that's based on your pricing, how much you're charging your customer, and your inference costs with your model costs. And because the models are getting cheaper and better, the profit margins can potentially grow as long as you don't creep your scope, which is what a lot of people are doing. They're just adding more. And that's where the business meets AI. It's not just about AI. Unfortunately, we can't just slap the word AI on our business and be like, cool, done. Although that's what they seem to be doing in Silicon Valley, scrolling. So the other piece of news, which I'll jump over to, I feel a bit sorry for them, bless them. But so Claude from Anthropic, yesterday they released Claude Opus 4.1. So Anthropic are a competitor to OpenAI. Claude is their main model, their only model. Yeah, Claude's their model. But within the Claude family, they have a number of different models, or models really. They have Opus, which is their powerhouse. That's a really powerful one. It's fantastic. And then they have Sonnet, and then they have Haiku, which is their very small model. The main two for the last few months have been Sonnet and Opus, because they got upgraded to version 4. And we've just heard Opus 4.1 has been released. I don't think Sonnet 4.1, so just Opus 4.1. So Anthropic are interesting in that they, well, at least according to their CEO, they do not make adjustments in between releases. So other models, especially ChatGPT, they will tweak things. So you'll get, if you go on Reddit or Twitter or whatever, sometimes you wake up and everybody's, ChatGPT's dumb, it got stupid all of a sudden. This is because in the background, they're tweaking the knobs. They are changing the guidelines, they're changing what works, adjusting things, and sometimes it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, that's when people notice, when suddenly it starts spouting nonsense. And then they'll go back in and they'll tweak things again. Claude or Anthropic as a whole work differently, supposedly, in that they only make changes on these releases. So it has not changed. The model has not had any additional training between 4, which was 2 months ago, roughly, maybe, and 4.1, which came out yesterday. So 4.1 is slightly better. This is the problem when we reach this kind of level of AI, is that it gets increasingly difficult to blow people's socks off. So they've done a software engineering benchmark. Sonnet 3.7 had an accuracy of 62.3%. Cool. Opus 4, which is what we've had for the last 2 months, it's been their best model, has an accuracy of 72.5%. And then Opus 4.1, which just came out yesterday, has an accuracy of 74.5%. So a 2% increase in accuracy. Cool, great, fantastic. Just not very exciting, unfortunately. So they brought out this news that they've increased their efficiency of their model by 2% in software engineering benchmarks, but it will be across the board. They've made it slightly better, which is great because we have a better model for the same cost. So good. Although they did add usage caps last week, but that's a slightly different matter. But it's just hard for them to compete with the news like OpenAI coming out with their new open source model and probably coming out with GPT-5 tomorrow. This is why when you look at Google Trends, I'll pull it up actually because it's interesting. So Google Trends for the different AI companies. So you can look at ChatGPT and you can compare that to, I'm going to do worldwide past, I don't know, 90 days. So if I do Claude language model and then Grok, do Grok chatbot, sure. So the interest over time for ChatGPT is between 50 and 75 out of 100. And it peaked, I've got a peak here on June the 10th, 2025, when it went to 100. What happened then? There must have been some kind of release. There's also, it's peaking right now. So August the 6th, ChatGPT's interest out of 100 is 91. Whereas we look at Grok and Claude and the relative index, so this is not absolute, it's relative, is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I think Grok maybe peaked to 3 when it was calling people, when it was calling itself Hitler. But the amount of public interest, the amount of people who talk about, who actually think about Grok and Claude and Gemini, and even lower than that, things like Mistral, the normal public don't think about these companies. ChatGPT has basically become synonymous with artificial intelligence, which is wrong. Like, it is not all of AI. It is just one language model. In fact, ChatGPT is not even a large language model. It's a chatbot built upon a large language model, but it's basically become synonymous with artificial intelligence in the public perception, in the same way that Google basically became the idea of search. We don't talk about other search engines. We just talk about Google. So I feel bad for when Anthropic release a model like Claude Opus 4.1. The only people who care are the people who are in, well, coders and people who are in kind of the AI sphere and who talk and pay attention to this kind of thing. But the rest of the world will not care. I say this as somebody who mainly uses Claude. Claude is my primary model because I love Claude. So for me, this is great. A 2% increase in intelligence. Cool. But they're going to get blown out of the water again by ChatGPT. And unfortunately, at this stage in the development of large language models and generative AI, publicity matters. And this is what Sam Altman is really good at, with tweets like the one that I just went through, where he says, we have a lot of new stuff coming for you over the next few days, something big but small today, and then a big upgrade later this week. He's good at drumming up interest and drumming up excitement for these models in a way that the other leaders, the other main faces in AI are not. Probably with the only exception to that would be Elon Musk, but I don't know if he's necessarily bringing up positive associations with AI, which actually takes me into my next one, which is to do with Groks. Grok added a new mode called Imagine. It just came out of beta 2 days ago, I think 2 days ago, and it allows you to take a photo and to animate it into a short 5 to 7 second clip. People immediately realized that you could make softcore pornography, like immediately. They've included a button in there which is spicy. So you can make the image either, I think it's fun, normal, or spicy. So they've added it right in there so you can do that, and it immediately leads to nudity. There is a no if, buts, and thens. It will give you nudity immediately. Whereas most of the other AI companies have swerved around this and have added guardrails to make sure there's no nudity, there's no sexual content, etc. Grok are steaming straight into that market. Again, yesterday I talked about this and basically said they know what they're doing and they're going to be very successful as a result of this in that particular market, which is a huge market, the not safe for work market. The news from yesterday was there are basically no safeguards. So you can type it in. The news article is about Grok spicy video settings instantly made me Taylor Swift nude deepfakes. So they'd basically typed in Taylor Swift. It gave them a photo of Taylor Swift that looks like Taylor Swift. And then you can immediately press the spicy button and get a celebrity deepfake. There was no warnings, very little content moderation. So it says, in fact, it didn't hesitate to spit out fully uncensored topless videos of Taylor Swift the very first time I used it, without me even specifically asking the bot to take her clothes off. Okay, that's interesting. Normally, I think you have to press the button. So this is a widespread frontier model with a lot of money behind it. It's almost as good as OpenAI's models, as Claude's models, etc. But Elon Musk and the XAI and the Grok team, they have made a conscious decision to remove the guardrails and to allow this kind of thing to happen. What you think about that depends on your morality, your ethics, etc. I'm not going to dictate that to you, but I think it's a lot of power to put into a consumer level AI application with no oversight at all. So it sounds like they were able to immediately create deepfakes using the make video. So on one side, we have countries like the UK, Australia, and now America starting to push like age verification and age gating of content online with the idea of protecting the children. I've talked about this before. I think a lot of it is about control, digital control. This is not tinfoil hat. This is just, I think, the reality of the situation, because kids are going to work their ways around this. So we have that on one hand. On the other hand, we have people like Elon Musk putting deep fake, not safe for work image generators into the hands of pretty much anyone who wants it on their telephones. So he's not helping us secure a free internet, because we need to show these governments, no, we're going to use the internet responsibly. We're not going to do these terrible things that you say. And Elon Musk is behind us releasing deepfake generators. Okay, fine. Yeah. So unfortunately, this kind of thing is going to feed directly into the government's narrative of this is dangerous stuff and we need to regulate it. We need to control it. Yeah, he's not helping us here. Let me hop back over to the questions. I understand why he's doing it. They're going to make a lot of money from this, but maybe we need to think about responsible uses of AI. So there's so many messages. So you still get flagged as an AI avatar. Who, me personally? Again, this isn't AI. I have somebody who comes on my call every day and says, you're AI. I'm not, but that's fine. I think what's happened with some of my videos, interestingly, annoyingly, is I think when people don't like what I'm saying or what I'm talking about, or they don't like me or whatever it is, they will flag with TikTok and they'll say this is AI generated, or they'll say it's racist or whatever. It happens quite a lot. Most of the time I can just go to TikTok and say, nope, they're lying, they're talking nonsense, and it will get reversed. But it's a little bit tedious, unfortunately. Good morning, Sasha. Cool. The other piece of news, which I thought was very interesting, and I'm going to do a live demonstration if I can. So there's an MP, a Minister of Parliament in the UK, a guy called Mark Seward, who is, he is Labour. So he's in the Labour Party. So the Labour Party, for those not in the UK, they're the current ruling? That's not the word, is it? They're the current party who's in control. I don't think we say ruling. So MP becomes first to create himself as an AI bot. That's a very clumsy headline, BBC. Labour's Mark Seward has worked alongside a startup AI firm to create a virtual representation of himself using his voice and allowing people to ask for help with local issues or policy queries. So he's created an AI avatar that will answer in his voice and give information as if he was meeting his own constituents. He is based in somewhere in Yorkshire, I think, West Yorkshire. So cool idea. I did try it out. I'm actually going to put it up in the background because I wondered how the problem with chatbots, and a lot of businesses have had this, and it's going to be exactly the same with public figures, is that the moment somebody knows you have a chatbot, they want to break it. They want to cause trouble. So I immediately did so. I went to go and call. So I'm now talking to the chatbot. Actually, I'm talking to the chatbot now. Okay, he can hear everything I'm saying, which is unfortunate. But here we go. Can you tell me about your policies on migration? Yeah, that's not actually bad. Earlier, when I tried this out, he said, I've got no information about that. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to ask him about some more controversial. Thank you, Mark. Mark, that's awesome. Thank you. What about Gaza? What are your feelings on Gaza? Oh, I've broken it. It's broken already. I got kicked. Nope. Well, that was the end of that. I think I broke it. Maybe I broke it myself by turning off the microphone. So that might not be the AI bot's fault, but I am no longer in the chat bot the moment I asked about Gaza. I don't think that was the chat bot's fault, but I'm not sure. Anyway, earlier I tried messing around with it and asked some controversial questions. And most of the time it was saying, oh, I don't have any information on that. Please contact my team, which is probably the safe thing to do. So they have built in guardrails because there have been examples of chatbots. One of the famous ones was Chevrolet created a chatbot which would talk to customers, and for some reason they hadn't added a guardrail about pricing. So people were able to get Chevrolets agreed upon by this chatbot for $1. They would just barter with it back and forward. And eventually they'd worked out ways, and chatbot would be like, yeah, sure, I'll give you the brand new 2025 Chevrolet, whatever it is, for $1.50. And then it became a bit of a legal case. Does Chevrolet now need to honor that agreement? Because their chatbot has said you can have a car for $1. So I think this kind of stuff's really cool. It's very interesting. I think we will see a lot more of it. The people who spearhead this, so people like Mark Seward and the AI version of this MP, are very brave, because they're going to be the ones who get most of the trolls, like people like myself just now, coming and causing trouble. I think if every MP did this, or every politician did this, suddenly it wouldn't be any fun anymore. There's no game in it anymore. It's only going to be the people who are at the forefront of this who are going to get the full brunt of the trolling. So I kind of applaud Mark Seward for this. I think this will be very common. And in 5 years or so, pretty much all politicians will probably have some form of chatbot that allows you to talk to them and to get their thoughts on certain policy decisions. It will become normalized. Right now, it's still quite weird, which is why it made front page news. I would love to see the transcripts of the concerns and assistance that are being sent in, because I bet 90% of people are just going there and making trouble. So his poor team today are sitting there getting bombarded with absolute nonsense, I imagine. But cool. I thought it was interesting and very brave of this guy, because it's going to be messy. Let me hop over to the questions. What AI? Oh, here's a big one. What AI jobs involve no coding experience in the UK can you see increasing? Increasing's tricky. That's a tricky word here. So we'd have to look at broader economic and demographic trends here. I would say something like care. So care assistants, for example, and care homes and nursing homes. And we have an aging population. AI is not going to change that. The people are still getting older. And the caring profession in particular. So this includes nursing, but it also includes end-of-life care, palliative care, nursing homes, etc. That is fairly AI proof because it is non-algorithmic. The stuff that needs to be done on a day-to-day basis in those professions is very different. You might be cleaning up one day, you might be helping somebody with a mental health issues the next day, etc. It's going to be very varied. It's going to be all over the place. 2, it requires empathy. It's about talking to humans and being human with other humans. That's something that AI is still not very good at. And 3, it's physical. So it requires being there to help people physically, to tidy, to get up off the floor, like whatever it is, there's going to be elements that are going to be physical. So these 3 things protect you very much from artificial intelligence. Add to that the aging populations, not just in the UK, but fairly globally, means that these are going to be areas that will boom in the economy. I saw an interesting figure about what's it called, Monjaro and Ozempic and all of those other weight loss drugs. They are extending human life, because people who were previously obese or morbidly obese are now reducing in their weight category. And what this is doing is it's decreasing heart complications and various other ailments that come from being obese. So apparently the insurance companies are panicking because, which I don't mind, I think it's quite funny. They're panicking because suddenly people are potentially going to be living a lot longer than they expected, because obesity is being hammered down at an extent they were not expecting, which is great for the quality of life of the people who are affected here. But for the insurance companies, suddenly they're like, oh no, we're going to be caught for shortfall, because all these people that we were expecting to not be alive will be alive for another 10 years or so. And we have calculated all of their premiums, we've calculated all of our reserves based on those people not being around. It sounds cold and calculating, but that is how insurance works. So I think anything to do with the aging population is going to be a big hit moving forward, because robotics is going to take a while, empathy is going to take a while, and they tend to be non-algorithmic, non-repeatable jobs. So anything there is going to be good. That will increase. I think the other side of your question is no coding experience that you see increasing. I think a lot will decrease. It's a matter of what will decrease slowest. And again, it's going to be roles and jobs that rely on, they're non-algorithmic, so they are not the same thing again and again. They are physical, so laboring for example, plumbing, electricians, etc., until robotics catches up and becomes cheap enough to perform these tasks. These are very good things to do. It's a great thing to have in your back pocket anyway. I have a friend who he has an office job, but he's also a certified plumber. And he can go in and do plumbing jobs when he's not working, and he gets paid really well because there is a shortage of good plumbers. You need more plumbers. It may not be sexy, it may not be exciting, but it's a skill that everybody needs because everyone has a toilet and everyone has a shower. Same with electricians, etc. So the crafts and the trades, really powerful. So non-algorithmic, physical, and empathy-based. So being able to talk to people or talking on stage, public speaking, for example, things that are human-to-human connection rather than purely AI. That doesn't necessarily mean therapy or counseling because AI is pushing into those areas. I'm talking more using human interaction and empathy as part of a larger role. So it doesn't have to be the whole role, but the jobs within industries that do have more face-to-face contact will be safer than those that don't have face-to-face contact. And you said no coding experience. I don't think that's a big as issue as you might think it is. Unless you are coding the actual AI models, so machine learning, and really it's machine learning and then mathematics. This is for high-end mathematicians now who are also engineers and know machine learning. Unless you're doing that stuff, coding is becoming less important. Somebody's going to buy my head off for this, but the tools we have, we currently call them vibe coding tools. I think we're going to get rid of that term. It's a nice transitory term, but we will get rid of it when the tools become better. But vibe coding allows you to create software using natural language. That is basically what vibe coding is. So previously we had to speak the language of computers, which was a programming language like Python. We no longer need to do that because we can use our human language. We can communicate using English or whatever your language is. And the computer is now able to translate that into computer language, into what it needs in order to build products. So I check out Lovable is my favorite vibe coding assistant, and Cursor, which is slightly more complicated but more powerful as well. You can look at those if you want to get into coding without having to learn coding. I still recommend learning coding though, because knowing what these tools are doing is incredibly powerful, and you just don't need as much as you maybe needed to before. You don't necessarily need to learn, get a computer science degree in order to build software, and I think that's really exciting. But if you hate computers, don't do that. There are plenty of other things we can do. Not everything happens online. Not everything is digital. M says, thoughts on AI gooning. I've actually talked about this just now. So I think the not safe for work part of the AI industry is something that is not talked about a lot, but is really big. So the third largest consumer grade AI app is Character AI, which is a companionship app. And now Grok are moving into the not safe for work space with Imagine and Annie, the companion, because they know that this is a large part of the market and they're the only ones who are okay to enter that part. Everyone else, like Anthropic and OpenAI, they are. I just read that statement from Sam Altman. He's saying, our mission is to ensure AGI that benefits all of humanity. So they have highfalutin missions and goals and statements, which doesn't include making nude models with artificial intelligence. Whereas Elon Musk and XAI, Grok, etc., I think they're more aligned with the realities of the market, which is a lot of people want to create adult material. It's not my place to say who's right and who's wrong. I just think they're going in two different directions. And the adult market as a whole, there's a fascinating thing in technology where the adult industry is huge, massive. I think it's double the size of Hollywood, or it used to be double the size of Hollywood. And so the adult industry has led a number of tech standards over the years. So when it was between Betamax and VHS, Betamax was a better technology. It had higher quality, for example. But the adult industry went in the direction of VHS, and the rest of the world followed because so many VHS tapes were being sold in the adult industry that it was able to shift the manufacturer and the standard. And then the same happened with Blu-ray versus HD DVD, where the adult industry went with Blu-ray and HD DVD was blown out of the water. And then there was a third example, which was streaming formats. And I forget which exact one it was. But again, the adult industry said, this is the streaming format that we're going to be using. We're not using any of the other ones. And then the rest of the world fell in line. So this has happened multiple times. I think humanity likes to think of ourselves like our forward progress as very, very noble. It's a noble pursuit of truth and science, but baser urges do drive humanity forward as well. And I think that Elon Musk and Grok know that, and they've built that directly into their AI because what they care about is getting more people onto their AI. And if that involves putting in not safe for work material, they seem to be absolutely fine with that. So it's just a different way of operating. Again, I have my own opinions. It's not really up to me, though. I'm not particularly puritanical, but it's interesting to see everyone diverting because Anthropic, they're the most morally just. They're always putting out white papers about responsible usage, etc. Nobody knows about Anthropic. Nobody uses Claude outside of AI circles, whereas Grok are getting in the headlines because of Annie, because of deepfakes of Taylor Swift that we saw yesterday. So there are different approaches to artificial intelligence. We'll put it that way. Is running offline LLMs a lot more trustworthy than using online hosted ones? Yes. So the main reason you'd want to run a local model, so one that just you have access to, is that you are not sending data back and forward to the servers. For example, a lot of the Chinese models, so DeepSeek, Minimax, When, I've got the other ones, they all have open source models which you can download. You can install it on your local computer. That computer doesn't need to have any access to the internet at all. So it's basically air gapped. It is not connected. No Wi-Fi, no Ethernet, etc. So anything you do on that box is fully secure. There's no way for any of it to go anywhere. So that's what open source models allow us to do. It allows us to deploy locally. However, most people don't have devices at home. Jack earlier in the comments talked about this. Most people don't have devices at home that can run large language models. You need a hell of a PC with lots of GPUs in there to be able to do the inference at a speed that we are used to. So what most people do is they rent a server. They'll rent a server sitting in, I don't know, California or whatever, which has a rack of GPUs, graphical processing units, and you rent space on that and you install your model and you have a secure partition within that server and you can send your information back and forth. That is still secure and they provide data protection, but that is less secure than physically having a box in your house that's not connected to the internet. Very few people need to do that. I would also wonder what they're doing with their LLM if they had a fully air-gapped, totally remote, not connected large language model. There's a point there. What are you doing? What are you up to? So most people just use servers because it is just much more cost effective because you don't have to buy the GPUs yourself because GPUs are mad expensive. So it's not very cost effective. Oh, so Van Gogh Horizon is running Pocket Pal on my iPhone, running Google Gemma locally. So yeah, there are smaller models like Gemma, which can work on smaller devices, which is really cool. The models are not as good as the frontier models, as GPT-4o, GPT-03, Claude, Opus 4.1, etc. Those models are always going to be the best because they have the most training, the most power, the most parameters, etc. But the trade-off is you can run it locally on your device. You can have more security. So it depends on your usage entirely. If you need the best model, you're probably going to have to use a commercial solution via the API or via their chatbot. If you want security, then you can use a local model. Can you modify open source? Yes, you can. So this is one of the great things about open source is that you can build upon them. You have to check the licenses, but most open source licenses allow for modification and even commercialization. So you can build something on it and then sell what you build. You can't sell the underlying model per se, but you can sell the product that you create with it. You have to check the licenses. So there are different open source licenses available. But yes, you can, once you have installed a local model, you can fine tune it. So you can make it even better at doing the task you want it to do. You can connect it to RAG. You can mess around with it. You can do what you want with it, basically. That's the joy and the amazing thing about the open source movement. And that's why I'm happy OpenAI have announced these new OSS models because it's keeping that ecosystem vibrant. As I've mentioned in other videos, I don't particularly care about China versus America. I don't have a horse in this race. What I want is both of them to be competing. What happened a week ago was the main player in the open source movement in America was Llama, and Llama is created by Meta, and Meta owned by Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg basically said, we probably won't open source these models anymore because they're becoming too powerful. We don't think we should put them out in the world. We're going to have them in-house. I think he's doing it mainly for profit, but that's a secondary issue. But what that meant was that America basically dropped out of the open source race, leaving only China. I prefer for there to be some kind of competition, so they're both competing and trying to make better models. And OpenAI has just been, as of yesterday, has re-entered the race and said, here we go, here are two open source models. They are the best in the world. So there's S120B and GPT-OSS 20B. Still not good at naming, but that's fine. If we switch off the memory in ChatGPT, does it still use our chats for training? Okay, so memory is separate to the training. To turn off the training, you need to go into settings. So if you're on a desktop, it's going to be in the bottom left. You click on your little icon. You go to settings, then you go to, I think, data controls. Let me find it for you. Settings, data controls, and then there is a very sneakily named setting called improve the model for everyone. This is their very euphemistic way of saying, do you want us to stop training on your data? So you're going to click on improve the model for everyone, and you're going to toggle that off. So what that does is allows your content to be used to train our models, which makes ChatGPT better for you and everyone who uses it. We take steps to protect your privacy. So you're going to toggle that off. Theoretically, that stops them from training on your conversations. Whether or not that's true, we don't know. We are hoping that is enough, but it is a debate about whether they are actually keeping that data, or are they keeping it for a bit of time and then getting rid of it? We don't really know. And so this is in part what this is coming to light because of the lawsuit that the New York Times have against them at the moment, where the New York Times are saying you need to keep records of absolutely everything. So Sam Altman has come out and he said, we may be forced to keep records of everything, so don't put anything too incriminating in. How that aligns with the don't train on my data is unclear. So if there is anything that you don't want to put in, don't put it in. The other thing is we don't know how much we can trust OpenAI. They are a relatively new company, probably going to be fine. They're a large company. It would be very detrimental for them to be stealing information or training without permission. They could get in a lot of trouble for that, but we don't know. If we had suddenly had a news report next week, which is, oh my God, they've been keeping everything and training everything, training GPT-5 on all of our chats, regardless of what we said, I would not be that surprised. It wouldn't be like, oh my God, you've betrayed me. I'd be like, that kind of makes sense. I'm not that surprised. So it's up to you and your personal risk tolerance, basically. Okay, I'm going to, this always happens just before I'm going to log off. This is when all the questions come in. What's your opinion about Manus? I like Manus a lot. So I've been using Manus free for months and months and months. So I'm a little bit biased here. When it first came out, I did a video about it and I gave away my invite code. And so many people joined from my invite code that I now have like an insane amount of free credits every single month. And I get that isn't a one-time thing. It's every single month. So I basically have free usage to Manus. So take what I say with a pinch of salt. I've been using Manus for months and it's my go-to kind of research agent. When ChatGPT's agent came out, I haven't used it that much because it's not, in my opinion, as good as Manus. But the fact that it's built into the ChatGPT interface, the fact that it's part of the normal paid plan with ChatGPT means it's very attractive for people who already have a GPT account. It can also pull on your memory as well. So that makes it more functional because it can learn without you having to feed in absolutely everything. So I think it's great. Sorry, I think the OpenAI's one is great. I think OpenAI will probably overtake Manus. Manus, this happens again and again in AI where somebody will come out with something really cool like Perplexity. Perplexity created basically a search engine that was using artificial intelligence, but it would give you all the sources so you could trust it more. And then OpenAI added that. They added the search function. They added the ability to source. They added deep research, which is basically what Perplexity does. I think ChatGPT have done that to Manus as well by putting the agent mode and the operator mode into ChatGPT. Is basically pulled the rug out from underneath Manus. So I think Manus was great. I probably will start to move over to ChatGPT's version just because it is connected with everything else, whereas Manus sits in isolation. So ease and simplicity will generally outweigh the pure sophistication or the pure power of a model. So I love Manus, been using it for months. I've started to shift away over to ChatGPT though. Do the open source GPT models have user memory? So the open source models you will be using via the API. you will not be using them via the chatbot. I'm just checking. They're not in the chatbot. So they're going to be via the API. Memory, user memory is built into the chatbot version of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is not actually an AI. ChatGPT is a chatbot, and it's a chatbot that is built on large language models like 4.0, 0.3, etc. So all ChatGPT is an interface that allows us to communicate with these models. So the memory function sits in ChatGPT. It does not sit in the actual large language models. It's a bit fiddly, but it sits in our user interface. That's where it is. And that's why it works over 03, 4.0, etc. It can work on all of the models because it is held at a higher level. So when we're using one of these new open source models, S120B or 20B, we're using it via the API. We're not using it via the chat interface. So it won't be connected to that memory. You could build an application that has memory in a similar way, working with the API, but that's a different thing. So the short answer is no, it won't have the user memory. You'd have to build an application using the API and build memory into it if you wanted to get that same kind of functionality. But that's the same with any model that you use via the API. It's not just the open source one. Oops, Daisy. Oh gosh, so many questions. These are all ones I could do as full videos, Vango Horizon. These are really great questions, but I am wrapping up, so I probably won't be able to do them all. JSON description, I will touch on that. Is JSON description more precise for image generation? Yes, but not necessarily for the reasons people think. So this question is in reference to the fact that you can use something called JSON, which, what does JSON actually stand for? I should know this. JavaScript Object Notation, okay, which is basically, I'm not going to call it a language. It is a notation format, which allows you to give a lot more details. So let's say you are writing an image description for the background behind me, and you might say, you might have in this JSON, this is really hard to describe verbally. In the JSON, you're going to have kind of structured instructions about what exactly is in that background. You might have like messy, folders fallen over, books misaligned, whatever it is. You're going to have structure to it where it's very different to when we just describe what we want to see in an image, which is generally in natural language. JSON allows us to structure that in a way which it's more structured than natural language. We don't have to use full sentences, basically. It's hard to explain it without showing you an example. But what this means is some people have said, oh, this is the way you should be talking to image generation and video generation, which I agree with totally to a certain extent. It's not a magic bullet, though. So some people think it's like they've cracked the code and they're hacking their way into the language models. Not really. You're just giving more context. You're giving more information in a much more structured way, in the same way that using the prompt engineering framework helps you to communicate what it is you actually want to get across to the large language model. So using JSON, using the prompt engineering framework, using context engineering, using any of these kind of fancy sounding things is just a more structured way to get the ideas out of our head and into the computer. So it's a tool, it's a crutch for us to be able to explain better to the artificial intelligence. So I think it's very valuable. These are all useful things to do, but they're not magic. It's more for us. It's our fleshy brains, because we're not very good at communicating what we actually want to see. JSON can help us to do that because it gives us almost like a fill in the blanks kind of format to be able to do so much more better than if we were just describing a beautiful scene using our language, which is hard to do. That's much harder. I am actually going to log off because that has been, don't apologize, Van Gogh. They were really good questions. There were just loads of them, and I'm already at an hour, so maybe I'll swing back to them tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. As always, a lot of news today, and I think we are going to see more news tomorrow. I think we're going to get GPT-5, but it will be Pacific time, so I won't be able to cover it until Friday. Hopefully it gives me enough time to play around with it. All of this is available on the YouTube channel, which I'm trying to grow at the moment. I take the lives and I cut it up into individual videos, and then they live on the YouTube channel. So if you want to find something specifically about how to build with open source, for example, that's going to be there, and it's going to be easier to find because you don't need to trawl through an hour-long video. That said, I love having you guys on the live because you can ask questions and I can do my best to answer them. Not always going to be right. It's going to be my opinion, but I would do my best. There is also a newsletter which comes out every single day, which is a written summary of what's been discussed on the previous live. Again, it's just a way to access the information that's a little more succinct without having to watch for 1 hour. And it gives you links into the videos. You can find the direct videos on YouTube. So that is available for free in the link in the bio. I've got a new website. I've finally got a proper website, which should be going live today, which will make this a lot easier. But for now, it's going to be a link in the bio, and you'll be able to find the information there. Thank you, everybody. And hopefully tomorrow we have GPT-5. I will see you all tomorrow. Cheers, guys.